with a Business is brought to you by Audible.com.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Married with a Business. I'm Craig.
And I'm Allison.
And we're Married with a Business. We're here to share tips, tricks, stories of what it's like for us to be a married couple that own and operate a business together. Allison, we had a great time a few weeks ago when we got to see our friends, the Savannah Bananas, at Fenway Park in Boston.
Yes, it was really exciting. It was exciting to see them go from the Grayson Stadium in Savannah to last year they came to the Boston area and they were at a minor league park. And then this year they came and they were at historic Fenway Park.
Well, it's 2024. We met Jesse and Emily over 2 years ago, back in 2022. They came on our podcast. They talked what it was, that was before, that was right about the time they started to take off and get really big with the Savannah Bananas.
Yeah, it's really exciting to have talked to them as they were starting to become more popular and more well-known. They had been through a lot of struggles building a small business, to see how far they've come in 2 years. And the thing that I think is super exciting for me is they have grown, they've built their team, they've built their following, but their mission of fans first is still the same. They are staying true to their core values and their core mission. And as they onboard new team members and they onboard new fans, they are continuing to expand, but still stay true to themselves. And I'm really excited to have watched how far they've come. It's super happy. I'm just super happy for them.
Yeah, so go back, if you get a chance, go back and listen to episode 84 back in July of 2022. Jesse and Emily were on the podcast. And then in November of that same year, we got to have Matt Grafer,
the young professor, and his wife on the show as well. And so we have also been able to follow and stay in his career and stay in touch with them over the last 2 years. And at the time, if you listen back to the episode in November of 2022, one of the things Matt was talking about was his vision and his goal for the future to be able to be the young professor full time and leave his teaching job behind. And he has been able to do that. And so it was so exciting to get a chance to catch up with him at Fenway and for us to chat with him real quick, even though he was super busy. It was wonderful for him to spend a few minutes to chat with us too.
Yeah, so it was really great. And if you ever get a chance, check out the Savannah Bananas. Their stories are great, all of that. But it was really fun. We had a great time. The kids loved it. I mean, it was definitely different with 37,000 people. It was kind of amazing for those guys, for people we know, to be out there on the field, doing their thing in front of that big of a crowd. So it was really cool for them.
Yes. And we're going to talk today a little bit about some of our growth for our business and our family.
Yeah. So I think we've mentioned it once or twice, but Allison and I have recently, for our business, bought a building. So we have, and a little bit of the history of our company in its office space. So in the 60s and 70s, the company had a small office space, but it was mostly kind of run out of a truck. And then in the 80s and 90s, it went to an office space that was in, Terry, your father's house, in the room over the garage. It had, computers started to happen in the 90s. And so, he had to get a computer, he had a desk, and it became an office, though.
Yeah, it was a dedicated space. It had its own entrance. So if people were coming, they could do that, but it was on their personal property.
Yeah. And then in the early 2000s, we decided to move the office. When Allison and I became part of the business, we moved the office into a commercial space, an office space that we rented. And we were there for 17 years in that one space.
About that. And when we moved in, I thought, oh my goodness, this place is huge. Why are we renting such a big space? What am I going to do? I'm in over my head.
And then not quickly, but we outgrew that space. And then so in 2021, 2022, 2021, we decided that we needed to move. We were ready to buy at that point. But there were some challenges. The market was a little weird. We were coming out of COVID.
Yeah, we couldn't really find a good place that we felt confident about buying. Again, I've said this before on the show, I'm a high C. It takes a lot for me to get to a yes. And so all of the things of how how much money are we going to need? How are we going to afford it? All of that kind of got me a little afraid to pull the trigger on something that we didn't feel like was perfect.
But we looked around. We found a building. We actually put an offer in on a building, and they said they weren't ready to sell, and they offered us a lease, a 3-year lease, with a first right of refusal to purchase the building.
Yes.
So a year and a half into that lease, the owner decides they don't want to have the building anymore, which then opens the door for us to purchase the building.
While we are on vacation.
Yes. It seems like, I don't know if this happens to the rest of you as business owners. It seems like big things always happen when you're trying to have a moment away from the business.
Right. And we've talked about in the past about how I have worked really hard over the last few years to get my systems and my part of the business to a place where I can step away for 2 weeks. Well, it was good reasons for working, but I still spent those 2 weeks trying to get things organized for this, back and forth with the realtor and the building owner, and then with the figuring out lawyers and the accountant and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was a little crazy. So hopefully this year when we go on vacation, we don't buy a building.
Yes, no, we're absolutely not buying a building. But Craig, so talk to me a little bit about why we wanted to buy a building when it first came up for us and how that long-term planning started for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, and one of the main reasons that as business owners we wanted to buy a building was just the ability to build equity in ourselves, right? I mean, we had been for 17 years paying this rent to a landlord, and that was money going out every month to somebody else for the space that we were in. And so obviously we wanted the opportunity, to build that equity to, as business owners, as adults, to have something that we were paying into that we were going to get something back from and accumulate wealth over time for when we retire or whatever.
And this discussion has been going on for 20 years with us. We almost, before we bought our first house, bought a building instead, and then again decided to buy a house to live in as opposed to buying a building. And so that moved our building plan along.
Yeah, but I think obviously, I mean, our business has stabilized itself. We obviously can understand how we run our business. And the other important part is that we have people, especially in your role, that are helping do those things. So it freed us up some space to be able to own a building, because there's other things that go along, with owning a building. But another reason that it was kind of important for us, or like, it was the ability to stabilize costs. We had seen over the years, the rent kept going up and electricity and all these things keep increasing, and some of them will continue to increase. But for us, it allows us to, we know what that mortgage payment needs to be every month for our business or for ourselves. So, the business, it stabilizes that cost for the business.
Right. And because, again, we do remodeling and construction, we also are well attuned to what the building needs for repairs, and that gives me the ability to plan for it a little bit better. And again, we bought a building that our company is in, so we're not absentee landlords in terms of we have a building but we're not there every day. So we take up 2/3 of the building, and then we rent out 1/3 of the building.
And then, obviously, on that same sort of vein, like, it helps us preserve cash a little bit. I mean, we have a tenant. We take up 2/3 of the building. The other third is as a tenant. It allows us to, gain some income from that to help make those monthly payments. And again, it allows us to, plan our growth based on the building. We're in a position now where we're not taking up the entire space that we have allocated for our business. So it allows us to grow into that space. And then also, there is that other third. If for some reason we needed to continue to grow, there's still more of the building that we could potentially use.
And in the same vein, if for some reason our team shrinks or our business model shrinks, the building that we got is set up so that we could shrink space and rent out another section of it as well. So for our use, we really were thoughtful about not just buying the first thing that came up, but what are all the pros and cons and what ifs, and does this building fit those for us?
So, Allison, talk a little bit about, like, we've kind of alluded to this already in the episode, but like, we bought the building personally as Allison and Craig, not our company. Why did we decide to do that?
So, one, for a liability standpoint, right? It's not tied in directly to the business, but two, for part of our retirement planning. So the money that we used to buy the building was money that we have earned over the last 20 years. So it was profits from the building. It wasn't profits from the business. It wasn't money directly out of the business. So as we start to think about our long-term and retirement planning, we have the business that we could sell or pass along. We have the building that we could sell or keep and keep generating income. We created a separate LLC for it, so it's not in our names personally. It's not in our remodeling company's names personally. It's its own business, and we are treating it like its own business.
Yeah, no, I was really proud when we did that and we started the LLC and we filed the paperwork, the necessary paperwork for it. I was like, oh, I own another business now. How many businesses can I own? I have multiple businesses I own.
As many as you need and you can manage.
But yeah, having that, having that more like not necessarily tied to the business, and that gives us the opportunity down the road that if for some reason, and we've always said this, that we're building our business to be a sellable business someday. If it gets passed down through another generation in the family, or if we ESOP it to our employees, or if we decide to just sell it outright to somebody, it gives us the ability then to say, hey, we also have this building that you can buy with it, or we can say the building's not for sale. You need to continue to pay us rent over time.
Right, and a business is only worth what someone will pay for it, and someone's only going to pay for it if it's a sellable entity that has systems and staff and operations and clients that are returning. So that's how we have to look at this. And the building might be an option if we sell, but it's also income generating for us for retirement.
And so when buying the building, there was one thing that you and I definitely went through that was new to us, which was, getting a loan, getting a mortgage for a commercial space is much different than a residential property in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the terms and the way that they structure things are different, and I wasn't used to that because when I was thinking and doing math, I was thinking, 15-year fixed, this is what it's going to be, but they don't really structure it like that. Do you do an SBA or do you do a conventional? And what are the pros and cons of that financially and logistically? We went through all of those with our accountant and with our loan officer and decided that we didn't want to go the SBA route. It would have been less money up front, but long term, I think it just wasn't a good fit for what our long term plans were. Not to say that that's true for everybody, but there was a lot more of educating myself and decision making than I had anticipated with that part of the process.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing, and you'll find this out when you go through the process. I mean, most conventional loans, if you go the conventional route and not a small business loan, most conventional loans require pretty substantial down payment, 20-25% in a lot of cases, and you become very limited in your terms. Like there are 10 and 20, maybe some 25, but like you can't get a 30-year mortgage like you do on your house.
Yeah, so that was that threw me for a loop a little bit because I wasn't anticipating the initial out-of-pocket cost as much as we did. But I think it'll be fine, and I think long term it'll work out okay. We have a whole new set of bookkeeping for this through our QuickBooks program, so I can see how everything's playing out. So that I think it was a good decision, and we really leaned on our trusted advisors with our accountant and our bank officer who we've worked with a lot in the past.
Well, and I think that's the other thing to think about. Like when you're picking a lender, when you're picking somebody to work with on developing and getting this mortgage, make sure you find somebody that does commercial mortgages.
Correct.
There are a lot of people who say, oh, I can do both. I can do residential. I can do commercial. I can do it all. We decided to pick somebody who was definitely more focused in commercial because they understood it better, were able to explain it to us better, and understood that process a lot better.
Yeah, that's all she did. And besides just deciding who you're going to work with, there are a couple other factors that you need to think about in terms of purchasing a building and or moving costs.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, if you get a chance, go back. We did an episode a while ago about moving, Allison.
Yeah, in March of 2020, we did an episode after we had moved into this building. We ended up having purchased, again, the building that we were already renting. So we didn't have to do both the purchase and the move at the same time, luckily.
Luckily for us. But moving is a big thing. Like if you're buying a building and then you need to move into it, there's a lot that goes into that. And not only from a financial standpoint, because it does cost you money to move, obviously, but just like from a planning standpoint, time down. I mean, I think there were some things that we just weren't necessarily prepared for. Like, our server was down for like 3 days while we moved.
Yeah, and in that episode from March of 2020, I talk about a lot of things that I hadn't anticipated and that I hadn't found as resources on the internet to help me. Again, high C, I need a checklist of all the things I'm not thinking about. So I have that together if anybody ever needs to be shared with them.
Yeah, luckily we again had the advantage of being in the building we were purchasing for a couple of years and had already done the move separate.
So choosing the right property is really important. I've said that before. The location considerations, how close do you want to be to your customers, your suppliers, the highway, etc. When we picked where we were going to be, those were all things we considered. Do we need to be in a specific town, in a specific part of town? Do we need to be on a main road, or is it okay to be in an office park where people don't necessarily see us from the road?
Right, exactly. I mean, for some people, buying and visibility is very important. If you have a lot of walk-in business, if you're a retail location, that's completely different from like where we bought in a little office park area. But our clients come to us when they need to, but it's not a walk-in situation where we're expecting to get that visual and get that traffic as much.
Right. The building size and layout requirements, depending on what your business is. Again, for us, just a plain office space with conference area and parking was good. But again, what is it that you specifically need? And does that building fit that? We looked at a couple of buildings that were just not the right layout for us.
Yeah, it was really important for us when we were looking at the building. Like we knew that growth was going to happen over time. So finding something that would allow us to grow with the layout that was there, and the space that was there. And then also you need to remember about zoning and any regulations or regulatory issues that may, be a part of that building. Are you close to conservation land? Is it a retail space? Is it zoned just for retail, or is it zoned just for like our buildings aren't zoned for retail, they're zoned just for office. So we could never have a retail space in there. And so those are things that you need to know when you're purchasing the building.
And good questions to ask the building department before you get too far along.
Yeah, so you need to do your due diligence and get some inspections too. I mean, obviously most real estate transactions of any sort will have some sort of inspection requirement, or you'll have the ability to waive that inspection. Again, because of the industry that we are in, we are very comfortable waiving a building inspection because we work in the building industry, and so we understand. And this was the building we bought was a wood frame building, as opposed to something that is done with concrete or steel. So those are all things you want to think about, like structural portions of it.
Right. I would never recommend that somebody who isn't in the industry waive a building inspection. It may not pick up on everything, but you need to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that's important. And then thinking about managing the property is really important. Again, we have the advantage of we work in the construction industry, but it's something that you should know about.
And the cobbler's kids are never have shoes, so that even though we're in the industry, that is still a challenge for us as well.
There's a rotted trim board on our building that we bought that needs to be replaced that we have not gotten to yet. So yeah, that is true. But like, you need to plan for that. You need to decide, is that something that you can handle as a small business owner, or is that something you need to outsource to a management company that will come and deal with those issues and fix things when they need to be fixed? So you need to decide if you're going to outsource that or handle it yourself, because there's a lot of things that come up. If there's a plumbing issue, you either have to call somebody or you have to have somebody that does it for you.
Yeah, and trying to figure out what those long-term strategies are for the property and the maintenance is important as we're looking at this building and we're thinking, okay, are we going to have it for 30 years? Where do I want to make my investment? What materials do I want to use so that I don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over again for the next 30 years, but I also don't spend more than I need to spend?
So, Allison, I like to kind of sum it all up. I mean, ultimately, we thought for us that it was a very good investment and a very good idea to take and put, some of that money that we had, that you like to squirrel money away. And so some of that money that we squirreled away and put it into a piece of property. How would you recommend, especially if it's an entrepreneurial couple, how would you recommend having that conversation?
I think there are a lot of things you need to think about. No business is foolproof and no business is 100% stable. But we have a company that's 65 years old. We have long-term strategies. We have long-term exit plans. I'm confident that we will be in business through to our retirement. If your business isn't at that place, I wouldn't recommend jumping into buying a building because it needs to be a blessing and not a burden. It took us 20 years because we needed to get our business and our family to the place that this is now a blessing. Even though that meant that we spent rent money and lease money longer, I wouldn't have wanted to put us in a position where by having purchased the building, it would have put us out of business because it would have been one too many burdens on us and the business to take on.
Right. And that's really, really important. I mean, we've talked about it. Personal financing, money management is super important. So while I think that we are very lucky to be in the position that we were in to be able to afford, purchase and the building and it not put a stress on us, you need to make sure that you're making the right decision for you and your family.
We can't lose our personal house for the sake of having a commercial building.
Right, exactly. So I think that's one of the reasons why it took us, you and I so long to get to that point where we bought a building. I mean, we had been talking about, like you said, I mean, we talked about it for nearly 20 years before we pulled the trigger on it.
Guess I'll have to wait longer for my beach house now.
You might. I do have a really good read, a really quick read for you that is about, just investing in property. Real estate can be a fantastic way to invest money. Dave Ramsey, who, you've heard us talk about before, has Real Estate the Ramsey Way, making home ownership a blessing, not a burden. So it's more about owning a home. But I think there's a lot of things in this book that are true to both sides of a commercial or a residential house.
You can definitely transfer the skills and the thoughts.
And Dave will, in this really short 70-page read, Dave will help you avoid like those costly mistakes and pitfalls that can just be really tough in a ruthless industry of real estate investment.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know sometimes until you have a bad experience. And hopefully by utilizing information from people who've been through it before, you can avoid those mistakes and be better off.
So check that book out. Unfortunately, it's not on audible.com yet, but I'm sure it will be, knowing Ramsey's. But you can find it on at ramseysolutions.com. You can find it on Amazon, all of those kind of places. But also check out audible.com. You can go to audible.com, get a free 30 days on us if you just visit audibletrial.com/bizmarried. And there's plenty of other great audiobooks people can listen to, Allison.
Oh, yeah. I am always listening to an audiobook.
Yeah, so it's a great way. Drive around in the car, listen to a book. So definitely do that. Also, check us out. You can find us on social media. Look for us on Instagram at bizmarried, B-I-Z, bizmarried, or find us on Facebook. Just search Married with a Business. You can also find our website, marriedwithabusiness.net. It's got everything about us. It's got some resources, links to the show, all of those kind of things. And also, you can fill out a form and be a guest on our show if you want.
Yeah, we're going to have some guests coming up in the near future.
Yeah, so check that out, marriedwithabusiness.net. Thanks for listening, everybody. Remember, find us online, listen, like, and share. And also, not only is it important to focus on your business, but also your marriage, because we're married with a business.